the reason why people think you either have to be spiritual or financially successful is because they think, well, if you're going down the spiritual path, money can be a distraction, or if you're going down money, then spirituality will distract you. And that is true. But
I think you gotta have a dream.
The School of Greatness.
Really? Yeah.
Please welcome Lewis House.
Neither of us are therapists, but Jay has this incredible background from being a monk and really being a meditator for a long time in your life and having the mindset of this monk mindset, where I've had more of the athlete mindset, playing sports my whole life at a high level. And we said, what if we could bring our real world experience from these different perspectives, come together and answer kind of challenging questions that we get a lot from our different audiences. And so we're creating, this is part one of Awkward Therapy.
Yeah.
And we've been trying to make this happen for a year now. We're finally here. So what's the first question that we are going to answer? The first topic that you think we should really dive into?
Well, I was going to start off, Lewis, though, by saying that the thing I love about this is we have these conversations anyway.
All the time.
Offline, all the time.
All the time.
And so for those of you that don't know, me and Lewis always make sure that we see each other at least once a month to have dinner together, go on a hike, hang out. And that will inevitably turn into this...
It's 4-hour conversation.
4-hour conversation about life.
Yes.
And we just thought, how cool would it be to have those conversations that are uncomfortable, that are pressing on taboo topics, that are a bit thought-provoking, pushing on the side of like, oh, that feels really awkward and uncomfortable. Because I think that people are thinking this, but they don't have a place to say it.
Yeah, and we say it to each other, and I'm like, I don't know if we could say this outside of this private conversation, or if we're going to get a lot of backlash, or maybe I shouldn't have said that, Jay. You know, these conversations that it's just like, how can we create a safe environment to have open conversations? I love what Emmanuel Acho has done with his conversations with a black man, right? It's like these kind of uncomfortable conversations. How can we just put these things out there and be open-minded to it, not be so judgmental or critical? There's no right or wrong, but we're going to come together and have conversations to try to figure out some solutions to some of these bigger questions that a lot of people have.
Yes.
And obviously you've done a lot of work on your own, and you've interviewed and are friends with a lot of top elite individuals in different walks of life, myself as well. And so we wanted to bring it together and see what we can come up with.
I love it. I'm excited.
I'm very excited. We've been trying to make this happen for a year. So this is Awkward Therapy Part 1.
Yeah.
And the first topic of discussion is what?
Yeah, so the first question that we were going to address today is, can you be aspiring to be wealthy or make money and be spiritual at the same time?
Yes.
That's the first question.
And I think a lot of people growing up, I think both of us probably growing up had these limits around people who had money and thinking, are they good or bad people? Are they controlling? Are they mean to people? You know, if you have money, can you be a good person or have some spiritualness to you? Or is it only one or the other? You can either be Mother Teresa and serve, you know, you can only be Jesus and wash people's feet and be, you know, humble, or you're this money hungry individual, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think that when I was growing up, at least, I grew up in an environment where the people around me believed that if someone was wealthy or someone was rich, that they must have done something dodgy or bad to get there.
Like illegal or sketchy or...
Yeah, it must be sketchy or illegal activities, or they must have stabbed someone in the back, or they must have hurt someone, or they must be taking advantage of someone or manipulating someone.
Using, abusing.
Using and abusing. That's the only way they could have got there.
Really? Yeah.
And generally, the idea that we all know of, that money is the root of all evil, I think that was something that I was exposed to a lot as a child, where a lot of people around me believed that, and we weren't wealthy. So we weren't in a position of financial strength. And often my extended family and others would look to people with wealth, and if we would admire that or see something, they would be quick to like dampen that and be like, no, they just do all this kind of stuff. And so I think there was always that negative view towards people who are rich.
How do we get to a place of, should we admire people that are wealthy? Should we look to that and say, it's really cool what they've built? Should we admire the accomplishment of amassing a ton of wealth? Or should we Or is that not something to admire?
You always ask the best questions, man. This is like,
you know what I mean?
That's such a great question.
Do you admire the results, or do you admire the person they've become on the journey of accomplishing the result and the actions they had in order to get there?
So this is not an interview, Lewis. So I'm going to make you answer that question first. I want to hear your thoughts because I've got my answer. I know what I want to say.
Well, I think this is interesting because I was going to ask you about.
It's not an interview.
No, I was going to have a conversation about how you first, because I remember having this conversation years ago with you, where you never thought that like making money was for you. You were just like struggling in New York City, trying to make it, and kind of live like month by month in a sense. And you told me you kind of had this limit around, can I be spiritual and make a lot of money? Can I serve the world, make wisdom go viral, and also is it okay to receive money? Is it okay to like charge what I'm worth or charge more for my services? So I remember having this conversation with you, and I was like, I vaguely remember what I said. I said, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself by not generating more to be able to then hire more people to scale this message beyond. So you're not putting all the weight on your shoulders. To be able to invest in more nutrition and food and comfortable sleeping space for yourself, all that stuff, so you can serve at a greater level. And so I think I'm answering the question whereas like, I think if you're doing your life and you're being in service and being the best you can be and as kind as possible to people on that journey, then I think it's both admirable and it's cool to see what you could create financially as well with the impact you're creating in the world. But it's all about how you show up on the day-to-day, how you treat people in the journey of amassing the wealth. I think that's a great But if you've generated a lot of money, but you've been a jerk or you haven't been in service except for to yourself only, then that's not something to admire as a whole man perspective, I think. Yeah. That's my thought.
I think that's beautiful. I love that. And I remember that conversation as well. And I want to go back to that question you asked though, because it's such a powerful question that should we admire people who are wealthy? And I think we have to be careful about what we admire because what you admire will be what your actions aspire towards.
So, and you'll start taking on those actions.
Correct. You'll start taking actions and behaviors and decisions towards what you admire. And so I would say that I've always admired people who had a purpose. That's what I admire deeply. When I meet someone, I'd say there's two things that I admire: purpose and humility. Like if I meet someone who has purpose, they're willing to sacrifice, they're willing to do whatever it takes, they are mission driven, they want to serve the world. It's why I was always a fan of yours from before we even met and we knew each other, because I was like, oh, here's a person who really wants to do good in the world. Here's a person who really wants to give. And so I think that's the first thing I look for. And then the second thing I deeply admire is someone who has humility, someone who I feel that they were really doing it from the goodness of their heart. So I think for me, my admiration has always been for those two things. And I don't think I can tell someone whether what they admire is right or wrong, but I would say that if you admire something, your actions are going to start dictating your journey in that direction.
Right.
And so you have to be careful what you admire because that's what you're going to chase.
Right.
And so I would say that I like admiring purpose and humility because I think they are worthy of a pursuit.
Sure. Who are some people that we could think about, who have amassed a lot of money, but also we feel like are purpose-driven and in service to whatever their gift is? Who are some people that we can think about?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about this beforehand, but I'm just curious about who is living that lifestyle right now.
Yeah, that's a tough question. But, and I think, I'd say we know a few people in our own world. I think people that I've always admired and looked up to are anyone from, like, I'd say, that's a hard question. There are people that are coming to my mind right now, but I'd probably say that I think Oprah's work's been phenomenal. The conversations she's had that have shifted culture or shifted humanity on her TV show.
Because she's brought in an entertainment, TV show, but brought in the elements of healing, of prayer, of meditation, of spirituality, of, creating consciousness in the planet, which I think is powerful. So she's bringing purpose to entertainment.
Yeah.
and she's built a massive empire
Yeah.
financially, been rewarded for that service.
Exactly. And I think that's a great thing. I think that's the reason why I find this question so interesting, because if we're saying that spiritual people can't be rich, that means that spiritual people have to be poor. That means all the people that are rich are not spiritual.
Right.
Is that the world we want to live in?
No.
Do we want to live in a world where the wealthiest people or the most externally, people who have the most resources are people who don't have spiritual intention? I don't know if that's the world I want my kids to grow up in or the world that I want to live in. I would rather grow up in a world where the most influential people had a deep spiritual intention.
Yes. And with that spiritual intention, they were, I guess, were rewarded financially for their level of impact and service. The challenge, the interesting thing is, if you have that much humility and you have that much spiritual intention towards your life and service, does the money matter?
Yeah.
Does it matter as much, like the more you earn? And does it really impact the individual's life if they have $1 million or $100 million? And that's the interesting thing also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in hearing your point, because the perspective you gave to me a few years ago when you brought up that point, like, I remember having like hundreds of millions of views and
no
then being
money.
4 months away from being broke.
I remember this, man. It's crazy to me to think that.
Yeah, and it was really true. Like, I would sit in meetings and people would be like, how many views have you had now? And I would share that. And I was getting all this incredible feedback. And then I didn't have any money, and I was literally going to be broke in 4 months. And what I realized was that was negatively impacting the amount of impact I could have sustainably, long term. And it's what you said to me, that what if you're making money, but then you're investing that in your team? What if you're expanding and creating more opportunity? Like today, where we have teams across the world, you have your team here, I have my teams, who are also living their purpose.
Yes.
And we can only employ them because there's growth in this regard. And then they're getting to have a deeper impact. So to me, it depends on what scale of impact you want to have. Like,
Yeah, and I think also spirituality for me is harmony. It's having peace and inner peace. And if you're financially stuck, or you're financially struggling, or you feel trapped in financial debt and confusion of financial aspect of your life, then I feel like that's holding you back from your spiritual progress.
yeah.
So it's figuring out how to have harmony and balance in these areas of your life, in your relationships and your health and your finances. For me, it's so key, and going deeper spiritually in all of those so they're all abundant.
Yes.
If one is not abundant, then are you maximizing your spiritual capacities
Yeah.
of this lifetime?
That's beautiful. That's well put. Yeah.
And so I think and I think so many of us grew up thinking that money was the root of all evil, or people with money were bad, or this and this, or whatever we thought of. But I think it's time to start changing the narrative and saying, okay, I'm going to use money for good. And how can I make a commitment to myself to use some of my money to be in service of other people, not just all for myself or needing the flashy cars or things. We both like nice things. You like fashion and experiences. I love travel and adventure and healthy foods and investing in that. You know, we take care of our health. We have trainers and nutritionists, these things. I think it's important so we have more energy and capacity to be of service. So I don't think there's anything wrong personally with making a lot of money or having focus on profit and purpose.
Correct.
But I think you want to have both so you can scale both. There's a lot of people who are so well intended, who have big missions, but don't know how to make money to serve their mission. And they're doing a disservice to their cause because they haven't figured out the skill of copywriting or enrolling people in fundraising or sales or some skill to bring in revenue to support the cause or the mission. And I think that's where a lot of nonprofits struggle with these years, is they're not thinking about all these other things they have to do to serve.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And I like that, because I also want to clarify that for someone who is spiritual or is conscious or is awake, whatever word you want to use, or even is focused on personal growth or self-development, their goal is not profit. Their goal is their purpose, their mission, their service. but they recognize that this is something that they have to think about and organize around in order to serve the purpose. So I think it's more about what's your top priority. Like, you don't wake up in the morning every day going, how can I make more money today? Like, that's not the mindset. You wake up in the morning going, how can we serve more people? How can we have a greater impact? How can we help more people?
Yes.
And you realize that creating a profitable business or income is a part of that purpose.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the clarity that we need.
Yeah, our measurement for our company is to serve 100 million lives weekly to help them improve the quality of their life.
Exactly. It's not to make X amount.
It's not to make $100 million a year.
Totally.
But in the, okay, how do we solve this mission equation, which is we want to reach 100 million lives weekly. What does that take? Well, most of it is through video right now. Video, through audio content, through social media, through books, through these different ways to scale a message, right? A different way to scale a message, which takes money, resources, and a team to execute on these different challenges in business to reach that mission. And so it's thinking, okay, we need more people to support on the team. Well, that's going to take more money. So how do we make the money to hire people to serve the mission?
Yeah.
And through the process of figuring out the purpose equation of how to solve that purpose conversation, then you need to figure out money that's tied to it.
Yes. And I also want to make that point that you have to be really vigilant on this path so that you don't buy into your own hype, in the sense of you can convince yourself of anything. And you could convince yourself that you're serving people and you're doing this and doing that, and then you're making loads of money, and then you just convince yourself that it's all okay. And so, yes, you have to be more vigilant on this path. I don't think it's fair to say that, oh, it doesn't matter, it's all good. You've got to check yourself.
What do you mean, vigilant on what?
So you have to remain accountable in some way to make sure that you are continuing to do good with the greater facilities and responsibilities you get.
As opposed to, oh, I just made 5 million this year, 20 million this year, and I'm getting all these accomplishments and awards and recognition. So figuring out how to stay humble and confident.
And purpose-driven.
And purpose-driven at the same time.
At the same time, to not get carried away by an opportunity because of that. And so what I'm saying is that I think people often say that, you know, like, the reason why people think you either have to be spiritual or financially successful is because they think, well, if you're going down the spiritual path, money can be a distraction, or if you're going down money, then spirituality will distract you. And that is true. That is real. Like, you can get really materialistic trying to be spiritual.
Sure.
And you can become distracted from your materialism by being spiritual. That is true. But the goal of life is to live in that paradox, like in that middle point of trying to figure it out. So I often say to people, like, I don't consider that and I know we both feel this way, we haven't figured it out. We don't know everything about everything, but I'm trying to toggle with that because I believe that the truth is in the middle. The truth isn't in the either or.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I want to talk about also how we have individually stayed accountable, humble in our growth and our trajectory individually, because there's at one point where I had no followers and one point you had no followers and we had no business. And now both of us have, you know, an ascension of audience, of opportunities, of money, of accomplishments, awards, things like that. I'll ask you first and then I'll answer. How have you...
Stop asking questions, Lewis. This is not the School of Greatness.
But I'm curious how you have managed the rise to financial gain over the last 5 years and audience gain and recognition gain. How have you, and I'll answer it myself, how have you personally stayed humble in the process of the rise financially?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like, that's what I mean by the vigilance, like in the sense of you can't ever be complacent about your inner journey. So if at any point you think you're humble, you're automatically not humble. If you think you're...
So I need to stop saying that to my girlfriend. I'm so humble now. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's like if you think you're humble, you're not humble. If you think you've been really grounded, you're not grounded, because that automatically cancels out the other. But at the same time, I would say that for me, what are my anchors? And I think I look at them as anchors. So my first anchor is impact is always greater than income. There is always more impact you can make. So I know that for me, what I'm trying to do with the work I'm doing is video was an entryway into a journey of transformation. I wanted people to move from videos, to listen to the podcast, to read the book, to come to events, to come to retreats with me in India. Like I want to help people go as far on their inner journey as they possibly can. That's my personal mission is if someone just wants to watch a 3-minute video and it makes them feel better, that's beautiful. But if someone one day wants to come with me to India and live the life I lived and have a deep inward journey, then I want to be able to facilitate that. I'm still building that bridge to people's deeper selves.
Yes.
And so the first thing that always humbles me and grounds me is I've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
There's so much suffering and pain in the world. There is so much unrest in the world. There is so much trauma in the world. So we've got a long way to go.
Yes.
So all the awards and the views, they give you confidence that you're going in the right direction, but you know you're far away from the destination. So that's one thing. I think the second thing that really helps me is being around, still spending time with my monk teachers who have very different vision as to what is valuable in life.
Yeah, because they don't care about material possessions or money and none of it.
They don't care. And so they're not impressed by that. And so to be around people who don't admire certain things helps you lose taste for it. It's kind of like when I'm around...
You're just a man.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Marcus Aurelius.
Go on.
Marcus Aurelius, the story is that Marcus Aurelius would walk through, I guess, the town and just have someone saying, you're just a man, when everyone was praising his name and kind of bowing to him and saying, you're like this God, right?
Yeah.
And it's having that accountability that you talked about, people in your life that admire you for who you are, not for what you're creating in the world, right? For just your kindness, your heart, your humanness, not the brand that you have built as an individual. And I think that's so important to have. My girlfriend, Martha, over Christmas,
love Martha.
They did it. She's great. Over Christmas, they have this like little game that their family does where you pick out like a word that's going to be your word of intention for the year. And it's supposed to be the word you need. Like everyone picks out a word.
Beautiful. I love that.
And you hang it in an ornament that goes on like a tree. And then you look at it again the next year, and then you're always reminded of this word. And there's different words like confidence and self-worth and intention and all these things. And can you guess what my word was? And these are random, right? So you don't know what it is. You pick it out, and it's random.
Okay, let me think. Love?
That's what we've been talking about, which is humility.
Oh, right. No way.
It's humility.
I don't think you told me that.
Yeah, I haven't. So it's humility.
Wow.
So she picked it out, and you read it in front of there's like 20 of her family members.
I had no idea about that.
And I was like, humility. They're all like, yes, you need that. I was like,
no, you were humble. No,
I know, but I
can say you're humble.
I was like, I feel like I'm pretty humble, but it's funny when you said that, like when you're saying you're humble, you need more of it. And I think the thing is, it's always a great reminder. Whether you're super humble or not, it's a great reminder because life will bring things to humble you if you do not consistently stay humble in your life.
Yeah.
There's injuries, sickness, attacks online or controversy, or whatever might come up in the world, and it's going to continue to come up.
Yeah.
But as long as you have the accountability and the right people in your corner who call you out on your BS and also celebrate you when you're doing good things as well, I think that's important to have.
I agree. I think life is a journey designed to disconnect you from your ego and dissolve your ego. If you think about life as that is the journey. Yes. And so as much as you willingly hand over of that journey, the less it's being pulled away. And what I mean by that is, and it's what you said, when you really think about any success you have or any impact you've made, there is someone who has helped you get there directly or indirectly. So for you to say, I am self-made, it isn't completely true because there was someone indirectly or directly that helped you get there. So if I say that, people appreciate how I communicate ideas today or certain ideas, I have to thank my monk teachers who taught me that wisdom. Or if someone says, hey, Jay, like you're really resilient or you've broken through a lot of challenges, but then you have to respect the people that tried to pull you down. And so
that gave you the opportunity to overcome adversity.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so either way,
Yes.
there have been people who have helped you get to where you are. And so you can't claim the ego of, I did this all myself.
And I think there's also something to be said for humility and receiving acknowledgement from others and to yourself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
celebrating what you've also created. I love the acceptance award of Snoop Dogg, where he where he says something like, you know, and I want to thank me.
Yeah,
I want to
first
thank
of all, I
me
wanna
for
thank
all
me.
the late nights, all the early mornings, all the hard work, and I thank me for never giving up on me.
Yeah.
And I think there is this over humility sometimes too,
Yes.
where people are like, well, I'll be like, hey, Jay, it was so amazing what you did. And when people say, it was nothing, it wasn't me, you know, I get to praise everyone else. I think there's a spiritual way to receive
Yes.
accomplishments and be humble in your thank you, graceful in your thank you, receive it as well, because you are showing up in a big way.
100%.
So you can be humble and also gracious in your confidence.
Yes, I think that's a great point, and I completely agree with you. I don't think it's never either or. I think that's the point, that whenever anyone tries to make it, it's like, should you be humble or should you be confident? It's like, be both. Should I be successful or should I be spiritual? It's like, be both. Like, you can be both. Like, and we need to be both, because sometimes you are going to need to. I agree. Like when you reject praise,
What happens?
or genuine acknowledgement, what ends up happening is you lose the opportunity for someone else to express gratitude.
To give.
You've blocked that ability for them to give.
You're robbing someone's gift.
Yes.
And that's a no-no.
No,
That's,
I mean,
we'll talk about a whole nother session on the law of attraction and
Yes,
hustle.
yes.
But there's something to be, you know, and people that make money know how to receive, because they receive money. And there's a flow also. There's a flow to it. The ones who are really good don't hoard it, right?
Yeah.
They let it in and they let it out. It's like a cycle. And they're investing it and they're spending on people and they're building things. And they don't say, no, I'm not ready for money. Don't give it to me right now. It's the same thing. Like, you don't want to block someone's acknowledgement or praise or opportunities and say, I'm not ready for it.
Yeah.
Like, take it in, receive it, be graceful. And you can also be humble at the same time.
yeah, use it as fuel.
Yes.
Don't let it go to your head.
Right.
But you use it as fuel. So if someone gives you praise, you go, oh, thank you so much. That's amazing. Now I'm going to use that to work harder.
Yeah.
Right? But you're not just using it to go, okay, it's gone to my head. Now I'm going to feel that. You're using it as fuel. And so,
And I think that's why everyone needs someone accountable to them.
yeah.
Whether that's your partner, I know Roddy is that for you probably. Martha is that way for me, where she will celebrate me, but she also just gives me great feedback if she thinks I'm being, you know, over the top on something,
Yeah.
which I never try to be, but
Yeah.
it's just her being there is a reminder to stay humble.
Yeah.
You know, even if she doesn't have to say anything, it's just like, okay, I don't need to be boasting anything.
Yeah.
And having someone that you are inspired by in your life that can be that accountability is so key, I think. Having that community of not everyone that just says you're incredible all the time,
Totally.
but someone who keeps you grounded and also supports your growth.
Yeah. Yeah. I fully agree. And it's for me, the interesting thing, going back to our original question, is
Money and spirituality.
yeah, like, and going back to, in context of this, is if you're proud of something that can be taken away, it will always leave you empty.
So you mean proud of your money?
You're correct. If that's all you're proud of what you've done, and ultimately whether you die with it or you lose it before you die, it is going to go somewhere else.
Right.
It's going to be transferred, even if that's to your children or to anyone else. Then that can be a very scary place to live. It can be a fearful place to live.
But you can never lose the impact you've made on people.
Totally. Like that, you know, and I think that's what I've noticed, is that purpose is the only thing that keeps giving to you, because it's such a, like, it's the only thing that can give to you without needing anything else.
And here's something else that I'm thinking about.
Please.
There are a few people that I know, and I think you know as well, who have made a lot of money, but they still don't have that fulfillment inside. Or maybe their relationships are off or their health is off. But there are others who have made a lot of money and they are so fulfilled with so much joy because it's purposeful money. It's money made with a mission in mind. And I think that's what we need to be thinking about on our journeys, is the money we're making. And I think money is great to have. It helps solve a lot of problems in our lives, but it doesn't solve the problem of fulfillment.
Yes.
And it doesn't solve the problem of inner peace. It might solve some peace. It might be able to help pay for challenges to overcome, but it doesn't bring us ultimate inner peace by itself.
Correct.
Unless we figure out purpose and mission as well.
Yes. Money gives financial security.
Yes.
And financial stability and financial safety, which are all very important things. But financial stability does not equate to mental peace. Right? Like we know people who have financial security, but they are not mentally peaceful.
They're emotionally unstable.
Correct, because those two things don't correlate. Same with emotional stability does not lead to financial security.
Right.
I know people who are really emotionally together, but they may not have figured out how to organize their business or their life to facilitate that. I would say I was in that bucket for a long time in my life. And so we've got to start seeing them as just two different pursuits. If I buy a ticket to LA, I'm not going to get to New York. And if I buy a ticket to New York, I'm not going to get to LA. You've got to pay for that ticket that you want. And they're two different things.
And emotional regulation and emotional peace and making money are two different skill sets.
Yes.
And you have to study and practice the art of emotional regulation, of emotional peace, of inner peace. It has taken me decades to get to a place where I feel peace inside, right? And I know you went off to go on this journey when you were 21, 22 or something, because you didn't feel that early on in your life, and you were inspired by the monks that you met who came and taught, and you were like, I want to go learn this and have this in my life. So I think it's two separate journeys. It's learning, and some people make money naturally and it comes easier to them.
Totally.
And other people are just peaceful, joyful people naturally.
Yeah.
I would say Roddy's like one of these just peaceful, joyful people naturally, just in her nature.
Yes.
Where other people struggle and have more depressed thoughts and they're more stressed out. And so it's each are a practice. And they can both be very challenging, but so worthwhile pursuing.
Correct.
Because when you master both, it gives you even more peace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, I have friends that make, I have friends that work their job, make their money, and then spend all their evenings and weekends with their family, and they're really happy because they know what their purpose is. And then I have friends that have all the money in the world that are unhappy. But then I also have the opposite, where I have friends who are doing their 9-to-5 job and spending time every day, and they have time, but they're not happy.
They're stressed.
Yeah, and then I have friends that are living their purpose, making lots of money, that are happy. And so we need to stop equating money and happiness in the same conversation, or money and success. They just provide different things. And like you beautifully said, they're different skills. And we have to decide, each one has to decide what type of life we want to lead.
And I think both are, I don't know, you tell me, both are equally as important to learn at the same time. Because if you're putting your energy on making money, but then you can't sleep at night because you're emotionally stressed and you have no peace, but you figured out the money thing, your health is going to go to crap and your relationships are going to go to crap. If you're just zenned out all day and you don't spend time on figuring out the money side, then you're broke. And there becomes some stress around not having things to buy and pay for and going month to month. That has an element of stress. So they're both so important to be working on together, I think.
Correct.
I'm a big believer that emotional regulation is the key in general, because it just makes you less reactive in all life situations. But finding a way to make money within a meaningful pursuit is so fulfilling as well. It doesn't feel like work when you're doing something meaningful and making your money around it.
And if you can't do that yet, I think that's one of the biggest issues too, is that doing a job just because it pays the bills and takes care of what you need, and then having time to figure out your passions and what else you want to do, that's a beautiful place to start. That's where I started. I think that's probably where you start too. It's like you start with just a base, and I think too many people hate on their current life because they want this passion life. But hating on your current life is just training yourself to hate on your future life. And I think we don't recognize that.
So never be happy where you're at.
Yeah. And I'm not saying you're going to love, like I would say I've done so many jobs in my life that I honestly did not love.
Me too.
But I choose, and I did everything from stacking shelves at grocery stores to working in retail to delivering newspapers. I calculated the other day, I've been working now for 20 years because I started working when I was 14, 34 now. So I've been working for 20 years. And I've done, I would say that up until 6 years ago, most of the jobs I didn't want to do.
Wow.
But all of them, I learned to take a skill that I use today. And so now when I look back, I'm like, oh, well, being a delivery boy taught me discipline because I had to do all the streets in my area without any reciprocation in the rain and lugging around this delivery news thing, which didn't make me look cool. I missed out on hanging out with friends, whatever, but it taught me discipline.
And I think it's, I had a lot of those jobs as well where I was a bouncer on the weekends at a nightclub.
I never knew that.
I was a bouncer on the weekend. So I was a truck driver during the day I only did this for 3.5 months. And I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Truck driver?
Truck driver for 6 hours a day. I would drive a massive U-Haul, kind of the biggest truck before you had to get a special license for a truck. So imagine like the biggest U-Haul. And I was driving for Napa Auto Parts, which is like a car manufacturer. And I would drive 2.5 hours from Columbus to Cincinnati, Ohio, and 2.5 hours back every day and transfer these auto parts from one truck to another and bring others back up to Columbus. And the truck only went 55 miles an hour all the way to pedal to the metal. And so I was just in the slow lane. This was before like really cell phones and all these different things. And I would do that during the day and then I would do the bouncing on the weekend to make some money. And I remember thinking like, this is not for me.
Yeah.
This is not what I was born to do.
Yeah.
But I think in those situations, just like you had in your situations, it's figuring out how to be purpose in the thing you're doing, be joy, be fun in those moments while you're thinking of like the next thing to get out of or how to get out of that into the next thing, what you want to be doing. And have you ever been to a restaurant where you have a waiter or waitress that's just like full of light, full of joy? They're so grateful. They bring a smile to your face. They remember the order perfectly. They just like want to make the experience incredible.
Yeah.
You always hear these stories about them getting hired and then going on to some other career because they brought the joy, they brought purpose to their career, to their job, which maybe they didn't really want to be at.
Yeah.
But that's how you get to the next place.
Yes.
It's by bringing that energy to the thing you don't enjoy and being purposeful anyways.
Yeah.
And I think if we could start doing that, you're going to be a magnet for opportunities to finding your purpose.
I love that. We were just in Rwanda and there was I don't drink alcohol, but I was with a group of people who were. And so there was a sommelier who was explaining, the wine experts like telling everyone what's in the wine and all that kind of stuff. And the person I was with encouraged him to, he was from Africa, and the person who was leading the retreat asked the person to explain their journey to how they became a sommelier at this beautiful hotel that we were at. And he sat down and he told us his story. And it's exactly what you just said. Yeah, literally.
That's cool.
So he was saying that he worked at a restaurant, he was waiting, and then he was asked one night to like choose a bottle of wine for a table. And so he chose a bottle of wine for that table, gave advice, and he was really good at it because he'd been doing his YouTube research and learning on the side. And he said that when he gave it to this person at the table, they asked him, why this wine? Why not the other one? Like they were really quizzing him. And because he'd done his research, he knew what to say. He said that at the end of the meal, that person who was sitting at the table gave him a card.
That's so cool.
And when he looked at it the next day, that was the owner of the brand of wine that he gave him that
way.
Night.
That is cool.
And that person just said to him, if you want to train to be a sommelier, then we'll put you into training school and everything.
That's cool.
And it's amazing. Like, he was so beaming when he was telling this story. He's so happy doing it. And for him, it was a big change because he was saying that the family he grew up in would have not been happy with him working in alcohol and wines. But it was his passion. It was what drew him there.
Right.
So it's just those kind of stories that melt my heart.
But if he showed up stressed that he was going to a job that he didn't like and saying, God, I really don't want to be here.
I'm not doing the thing I want to do.
Exactly.
Right now. Yeah.
And let me just get through the night.
Yeah.
Let me do the bare minimum. Let me show up and just get my check and go back.
Yeah.
If we go through life in those moments where we don't want to be doing something, nothing good is going to happen for us.
Yeah.
We're not going to create an energy that attracts financial abundance.
Yeah.
And that's not a spiritual practice, showing up, being kind of half lazy, half disinterested, and just going through the motions. That's not a spiritual practice either.
Totally.
A spiritual practice, from my perspective, is being present in the moment and giving your fullest joy, giving your light, giving your heart to the moment.
Yes.
That's a spiritual practice. I'm not saying you're going to be able to have the energy to do that every moment of every day, but it's doing your best to get back to the moment and say, how can I be of service to this moment?
Yes.
How can I use my light? How can I use my gift, whatever that is, in this moment to serve?
Absolutely.
What would you say is?
Yeah. Oh, go on.
What would you say is a spiritual practice for you, kind of day to day?
Yeah, I think the spiritual practice is, how can I truly treat everyone I meet as an equal, as a human? How do I see them through equal vision? How do I not talk down to someone or talk up to someone? How do I truly allow each person the space to express themselves and express myself to connect with them? And if I'm going to a place of work, if I'm going to a place of wherever I am, how can I show up believing that my positive energy and what I put out in the world will some way come back to me?
Yeah.
It may not.
It's hard to believe that, though.
It's hard to believe that, but it will. I've seen sometimes, it's like an investment. Like sometimes you make an investment and you don't see the benefits till 20 years later, but you're so grateful for it 20 years later because it almost surprises you. And that's how the world works. Like, there's very few things that are instant in life. I mean, I would say that you probably feel you're living off of habits and disciplines you built
10, 20 years ago.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like what you're winning in now is what you just did yesterday.
No.
Like, it's stuff that you, like when you, were playing sport and developing as an athlete, like all of those skill sets are useful today.
Absolutely.
Even though you're not doing the same thing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Similar to my athletic background, which you were an athlete as well, but you're more trained, you were the athlete of the mind, right? You were the spiritual athlete. You were getting up at 4 a.m., sleeping on the ground, just being of service all day, learning, teaching, meditating, being with your monk community. And you had to go through adversity on a daily basis, essentially. You had to do uncomfortable things and be positive about it. In football, when you're doing 3-a-days, it is not fun in 105-degree humidity and heat, showing up, putting pads on, and getting smashed over and over again for 2 hours at a time, 3 times a day. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But the coaches ingrain in you attitude and how you show up for others. And
your team.
In the team.
Yeah.
And if you are missing the play, you're letting the whole team down. And it's how each individual shows up with a positive attitude, makes the entire mission of the team move forward in progress.
Yeah.
But if you're stressed and overwhelmed and allowing the adversity of the moment to hold you back, then the team's going to be held back.
Yeah.
I think you did that in the monk community by constantly being of service, even if you're only getting 2 hours of sleep and in the heat all day, serving, asking for food. And same thing in life. And you're using that discipline now from 10, 15 years ago.
Well, I think what I see in you is that I didn't know you when you were an athlete back then, but I feel like the thing I noticed about you is that you're always bringing the most amount of value to everything you do.
That's the goal.
And whether when I spoke at your mastermind a few years ago, I saw how much value you brought your community, and I saw how much success all of them have had and the journeys and careers they've had. And I want to talk about this, and I think it'll be useful for us to answer this together. I think one of the biggest issues that people have, so let's say first they recognize, as we both clarified, that we realize that money is an energy, that it's a resource. Money is not good or bad. It's defined by how you use it. And if your goal is to use money for a higher purpose and for a mission, it can be a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
You've established that. I think one of the biggest things that people struggle with, and this is what I wanted us to talk about, is people struggle with the idea of, how do I charge for what I'm worth? Or I feel uncomfortable to charge for my services. I know coaches feel this way. I know therapists feel this way. I know people who are in the service business feel difficult to feel like they're allowed
Yeah.
to feel comfortable to charge for their services, because it's assumed that if you're doing good for the world, you should be doing it for free. And so let's address that mindset, because I think a lot of people might be watching right now going, Lewis and Jay, I'm with you, but I just feel really unconfident about saying this is how much my services are worth.
Yes.
And so I'll go first because I brought it up. Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I think it's the idea of like, the first thing I say to people is, we know this, that when people are paid for something, including when I pay for something, I take it more seriously. I'm more likely to show up and be my best, and I'm more likely to complete. A great example of for us is a personal trainer.
Absolutely.
The reason I have that is because I know I've already paid for his time. I already know I've paid for an hour. And if I cancel, I'm going to lose that money. And if I show up and I'm not full energy, then I'm not going to get that much out of it.
Right.
If I haven't paid someone, I may or may not go to the gym if I feel like it or not. I probably won't turn up. If I turn up to the gym, I might just be on my phone the whole time. By the way, if you're going to the gym, you probably paid membership too. So the idea of the transaction of money forces a higher commitment and energy from me included.
Yes.
And from everyone.
Absolutely.
And so, of course, it's all based on affordability and privilege and access. Of course, like, I'm not telling people to pay more than they have, but the idea that when we exchange money for something, we value it more.
100%. And I think our friend Dean Graziosi says you pay attention to what you pay for. And the more you pay for it, you pay more attention to the thing that you've invested in or signed up on. If you buy a house and you spend a lot of money on that house, you're probably going to make sure the house is in good order, and you're going to fix it up, and you're going to treat it well. You buy a new car, same thing. You're going to not trash it, at least not right away, hopefully. But if you buy a car for a few $100, you may say, if it hits a wall or if this is scratched, like, who cares, because I didn't invest that much in it. So we pay attention to what we pay for. And I think you're doing a disservice to yourself, and you're creating a model to everyone around you that you're not worth receiving of money if you're not willing to charge, or eventually charge more when you can deliver more value for that. And I think it's important to, and we'll probably talk about this more in another session about, law of attraction and the hustle and grind and things around that. But I think I think we should be constantly striving to develop more skills, add more value, and then in that process be willing to charge more.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're staying stagnant.
And I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's that you're charging for your skills that you've developed, and you're not charging for the time. You're charging for the time it took to build those skills.
And the value you can deliver with the speed of a delivery, hopefully.
Correct. Because I think a lot of people feel like, I can't charge that much for an hour, or I can't charge that much for X or Y or Z. But it's like, you're not charging for that hour. You're charging for all the hours that it took to build that.
Exactly. And I think a good example from my personal life is I'm paying for a therapist/coach right now I pay her like kind of a lump sum for 6 months for a certain amount of sessions. But if I was to average the sessions out and call it per session rate, it's around $700 a session, right? For an hour and a half, which is probably the highest amount of any therapist out there.
Yeah.
So therapy is maybe $150, maybe $250 on the high end. Some of the celebrity therapists are $500 a session. Yeah. So I'm paying above that, and I'm paying it because I'm getting incredible results from my inner peace.
Yes.
And it's worth it. It's worth it.
You're also investing in your future.
Investing in my future forever. And the skills that I'm developing that will allow me to have greater peace in my intimacy in my relationships, greater peace in my friendships, greater harmony in my business, and allow me to soar financially and with my mission. So it's like, it's all around a good investment.
Correct.
Even if it's 3 times more than the average, right?
Correct.
For me, it's
for you
worth
personally,
it. Yeah, and other people that may not make sense,
of course,
based on where they're at, and I get it, but there is an investment that will make sense for you. And maybe it's not in hiring a therapist or a coach, but it's going through a workshop online that you pay something for, or
buying a book instead of something else,
or listening to our podcast. Either one of those.
That's free.
Like, yeah, exactly. But you're investing time.
Yeah, your time.
And you're investing time to learn something, and then investing and applying it and testing it. And I think that's valuable as well.
And I want to address that it is. By the way, I feel awkward talking about money. We all feel awkward talking about money because we were told that it's a taboo in society.
Yeah.
You never ask someone their wage. You never ask them how much money they make. You don't tell someone what your bonus was this year. So we've created a taboo in society to talk about money. And that's why most of us feel really uncomfortable, where we'd rather not have that conversation. But the problem is then we spend all of our mind thinking about money, because then we're like, well, they didn't pay me enough. Or they don't value me. Or I should have got a bigger bonus. Or I should have got a better promotion. Or my salary should be this. And so by you pretending, or not even pretending, by you feeling uncomfortable to address money, you actually end up spending more time obsessed with the lack of it.
Yes.
And I think that's the pain, that you're actually obsessing over the lack of money because you're scared of talking about it. And I know I've been there. Like, I know what that feels like.
And I think some things that people can think about as they leave this conversation is, I'm so glad you said this because I was probably going to forget this. A mentor of mine early on when I was broke said, money comes to you when you're ready for it. And I was like, I feel pretty ready to have some money because I don't have any. I feel ready. And he was like, it'll come to you when you're ready for it. And I didn't understand it. When you're lacking, it doesn't make sense. But I understood it as money started to come to me, because I was like, I wasn't ready to manage the responsibility, the weight. I didn't have the knowledge on how to receive money, how to manage it, how to pay off credit cards and debts, how to automate things. Like, I would have blown it because I didn't understand it enough. So what you said right there is so important, that we need to have conscious conversations about money and be willing to be uncomfortable with your friends or family members that maybe you've never talked about money, and start talking about it. I love normalizing the conversation so it's not scary.
Totally.
So it's not bad. So it's not this, I don't know, I don't want to talk about it. It's scary if you know these things. Letting go of the shame around money conversations, and do it in an appropriate setting with the right people, but be willing to have these conversations. You won't feel the pressure of it as much.
Correct.
And when it comes, it's not going to feel like you have to hold on to it as much. And you'll just be able to naturally flow in the world more with open conversations. So I think what you said there is so important, we need to do.
Yeah, and I think that the reason we feel uncomfortable is because we've never been trained.
Yes.
And the reason why we decided to do this is because we're trying to have the uncomfortable conversation so that hopefully all of you feel encouraged. I've always found our friend David Buck,
Yes,
he has
it's great.
some really great stuff on, like, I remember reading his stuff years before I met him about how much money to spend on rent and how much money to save and how to do this, like when you first have like an income from a job. And I found that so useful because no one in my life has ever talked to me about that. No one taught us this, yeah. No one taught about it. So if you're scared of talking about money, if you're scared of figuring out how to charge, and by the way, if you're someone who in your heart goes, Jay, I feel like I'm somewhat taking advantage of someone when I ask them for money, bring more value.
Yes.
Bring more value, over-deliver, give your heart, and then you won't feel that way because you'll realize you're having a genuine impact on them. I realized when we launched some of our courses and programs, we studied how they improved people's lives. And we saw that someone in our community who's been part of Genius for 90 days, their happiness goes up by 40%. And we were like, that's incredible. Like, that's beautiful, right? And so when you start to measure impact, measure your impact. Don't just create something and hope that it works. Measure your impact. You'll feel more confident. Really take the time to create an offering that genuinely improves people's lives. You'll be more confident. And then ultimately keep checking in with yourself.
Absolutely.
To check, am I truly delivering or not?
Yeah, one of the things we do every Monday, today is Monday, our team calls, is we talk about what are some of the impact we're making on all the different programs and products, and from the courses to the podcast, like what are the testimonials of the week. We have a big spreadsheet with all the testimonials that come in. Different people on the team read out what they kind of have ownership over. Here are the biggest testimonials of the week. And it constantly reminds us why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So don't neglect hearing testimonials, hearing the impact you've made on your friends' lives, or if you have a freelance gig or a career, how you're being of service with your talents and your skills. You are living, when you live in purpose, that is the fuel to keep going. You love it. I love it when people come up to us on the street and say,
it's the best thing in the world.
I'm listening right now. I read your book. It helped me here. 2 years ago, I found you and I got it into this incredible relationship, or I got out of this challenging relationship, or I got in shape because of you or what you shared. it's fuel for our purpose to have more energy and go, bigger at it. So be willing to receive that as well, and start having these conversations. What else should we leave people with as we wrap up episode 1 of Awkward Conversations?
It's a big one. I think my big takeaway from today's conversation is we all have to evaluate our relationship with money. Do you have a positive relationship? Do you have a negative relationship? Do you have a neutral or void relationship? Most of us don't realize that we all have a relationship with money. If you don't talk about money, that's like not talking to someone, right? That's what it is. If you don't talk about money, then your relationship is you don't communicate with that person. Then you can have negative communication. You have negative thoughts about that person. You have negative feelings towards that person. Or you have positive feelings and healthy feelings. Figure out your relationship. And the quote or the wisdom that changed my relationship with money was this beautiful thought by Martin Luther King, which was that the people who love peace, and I believe I'm a person who loves peace, I believe you are, that the people who love peace need to learn to organize themselves as well as those who love war.
Absolutely.
And what I realized was that the challenge with spirituality or positivity in the world was that it was not organized enough. And organization requires finances, businesses, structure, operations, implementation. And so to me, that was something that really made me realize that if I truly believe I want to positively improve the world, I have to think about money. It's not my goal. It's not my obsession. It's not my priority, but I can't ignore it. Because if I ignore it, it's going to negatively impact everything.
There's another viral quote online that says it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I think we need to train ourselves to be prepared for the financial world, for the ups and downs of the financial world, for just the world in general that has a lot of ups and downs, and be prepared for all of it with a spiritual practice and a financial practice as well. I think that's the key, so that you're not stressed when life comes at you with war. Because there will be some war at some point, whether it be metaphorical or spiritual war or war on something, right? And for us to be prepared on both financially, spiritually, and be working on both of those will be so key. So if you guys enjoyed this conversation, let us know in the comments below and tell us what topic you want us to go over next in this series with me and Jay. Also, make sure you check out Jay's show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, On Purpose with Jay Shetty. Make sure you check it out, subscribe there. Subscribe over on Jay's YouTube channel as well below. We'll have all of his stuff linked up. We're going to be doing a series of this going back and forth. So the next episode will be on Jay's show, and then we'll come back here on the School of Greatness. So make sure you subscribe to Jay so you can get all the content we do together in this series, where we're covering uncomfortable, unique, taboo topics around life. So make sure to check it out, subscribe, leave a yes if you enjoyed this and if you want more, and share what topic you want to see more of below in the comments on YouTube as well. If you got value from that, then go ahead and stick around for more coming up right now.
Monk mind is calm and composed. The monk mind knows to be focused and aware. The monk mind knows. So everything in this book and everything that we're talking about is the transformation from the monkey mind that we experience to the monk mind. The monkey mind is almost the enemy to the monk mind. It's the opposite.
Yes. And how does someone who is living in a sense of scarcity, because there are people living in scarcity where they're unable to pay their bills, they're unable to provide food for their kids, they're single moms, they're stressed. They're stressed, they're overwhelmed. It's hard to get into a sense of abundance when you're in scarcity and stress. So how does someone find purpose in chaos when they can't even get out of the thinking because they're just trying to survive?
So beautiful question. My biggest answer is, first of all, I empathize with anyone who's been in that situation. I can't ever say I've been in that situation in the same way, but I've experienced similar things.
You've seen feeling in your life.
Yeah, in my own way. And I've seen my mom go through stuff like that. I know that my mom worked really hard to raise me and my sister while working, you know, while running around. And I've seen my mom be that incredible powerhouse of a person. And the main thing I would say is, what you can do right now is find meaning in what you do. Make what you do meaningful, passionate, and purposeful. You don't need to suddenly look to become an entrepreneur or start a side hustle or find some more time. Find meaning. And the way you find meaning, as you genuinely stop, press pause for a second, and go, what am I living for? Like, what am I living for right now? And if you're living for your child, and if you're living to provide and put food on the table, that is a beautiful thing that we should celebrate more. Yeah. And sometimes it takes us a moment to stop and celebrate that. And so I would say find meaning, because you can't always find happiness, you can't always find positivity, but you can always find meaning in that position. So I'll give an example. Like, I lost someone really important to me, a mentor, a few days back. I can't be positive about that. You can't be happy about that. Yeah,
it's hurtful.
You feel sad, you feel lost, but guess what? I can find meaning in it. Because I can make a list of every lesson he taught me and make a plan to try and live every one of those lessons.
Wow, that's beautiful.
And so if you're in a really tough situation right now, don't look for positivity. Don't look for happiness. Look for meaning.
That's a good one. Not trying to get yourself out of pain too quickly or discomfort or frustration.
Yeah.
Which I've been in the guilt of being like, oh, just be positive or whatever to people. But I think it's like, have your experience.
Yes.
Live your experience and find meaning as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
And create a commitment to how you want to use that meaning moving forward.
Love that.
I may not be great tomorrow, maybe not next week, next month, but I'm going to use this meaning to serve other people, to continue to do what I love, continue to be great to my friends, my family in the best way possible.
And when you start doing those small things with love and kindness, so much more opens up. It's like when you can be trusted with the small things and the small moments, you get trusted with more and more and more. And so like, it helps to just, in that moment, and it's in those painful moments that you realize how powerful you are. We all know that. Like, you really recognize it. And what you said was beautiful about not rushing through the pain, because, and this example's probably been shared before, but if you have a wound and you've cut yourself, it's like, you can't rush the healing. You can't rush it. If you broke your arm, and you've been through so many bodily injuries, you can't rush the process.
It's going to take 6 weeks minimum to heal a broken bone. Yeah, minimum.
And you've got to sit through that.
It's painful.
There's no injections you can take. There's no videos you can watch. There's nothing you can listen to. But our challenge is we try and rush through the pain rather than reflect through the pain.
We try to rush the healing process.
Try to rush the healing, and you can't rush healing. And healing is meant to be slow because it buys you time. It buys you reflection. It gives you so much space.
To slow down.
And that's what your body's calling out for. And this is our emergency. Like, how many times have you heard it where you slow down, and that's when you fall ill? Because guess what? Your body has been trying to tell you to slow down.
Yeah.
When you feel pain, so I write about it and think like a monk, pain makes you pay attention.
Yeah.
That's what pain's for. Pain's
Notice this.
Notice this.
Look at me.
Notice me. Look at me. It's like a crying baby craving for attention. When a baby's crying, you don't just go, it's crying. You don't just go, oh yeah, we'll just put it in another room and forget about it, right? Like, you go to it and you find its needs. Whereas without pain, when something's painful, we're just like, oh yeah, I'll just forget about it. I'll escape from it. I'll do something else. Yeah. You have to go into that pain.
I'll numb the pain.
I'll numb the pain.
With
That's
alcohol or whatever.
Yeah. 100%. That's usually our response is, what can I do to numb this?
Work more, have sex more, drink more,
whatever.
drugs more, whatever it is.
Rather than let me actually become alert. And guess what? The pain just gets higher and higher and higher and higher, because unfortunately, until it really hurts, we don't stop.
Or you need more and more to numb it with.
So true.
And so you go to the extremes of life, right?
So true.
Now, what's been the most painful thing you've had to experience since, because I know leaving the monkhood was painful for you, because this was a mission of yours that you wanted to have for your whole life, and I think you were there for 3.5 years. So what's been the most painful thing, I guess, in the last 6 or 7 years since that time that you've had to reflect back on, take notice of, pay attention to, and reevaluate?
That's a great question. I think for me it was in 2016, I moved out to New York. So just let me paint a picture of 2016. I moved 3 jobs. I got married.
Wow.
I moved country, and I just started a whole new life. Like, my life just transformed. So we went through all of that with my wife in 1 year. And by the way, all of that was surprises. The job change was surprises.
Yeah.
The country change was a surprise. The marriage was not a surprise. We planned that.
Right.
But apart from everything else, everything was a surprise. Now, I said I like surprises, so I can roll with it. But my point is, that's a lot of transition in a year.
So much transition.
And I felt the burden of being in a new city where we had no family, We had no friends. And my wife, who loves being around her family, and no one understands just how close she is to them, I felt this burden on me that I had taken away her time with her family, and now she was alone. So I was going out to work, and she'd be crying at home. And I was thinking, she's got no friends, she's got no support. And I know you can relate to this with moving and relationships and so much going on. And so it's like, I'm dealing with that. And guess what? 6 months later, I have to leave and move on and work on a new career to build everything myself. And then I'm 4 months away from being broke. And so on top of all of this, I've now got 4 months away from being broke. I've got enough money saved for 4 months to pay for rent and groceries, and that's it. In New York City. In New York City, and that's it. And guess what? Even on top of that, I've got 30 days before my visa runs out and I'm kicked out of the country. So I can't even live here anymore. So not only have I just got married, moved job 3 times, changed career again, had to move into an apartment, 4 months of being broke, and I might get kicked out in 30 days, and my renewal for my visa costs $15,000.
Oh.
So that's gonna eat into those 4 months. I have probably never been under that much emotional, physical, and mental pressure in my life. Like genuinely, I felt it. And I felt my body change. My breath was more stressed. I would be breathing faster, shorter breaths, not deep breaths, heart beating faster, not working out. You get into lazy habits, you start craving junk food.
Sugar to get energy.
I'm living in a 500 square foot apartment with my wife, which is tiny, like everything's in that space. And guess what? We both work from home. So I'm now sitting at a desk, hunched over, trying to figure stuff out. She's trying to cook in the same room. Like I'm trying to, just trying to figure out what to do. And I remember the next morning sending like 100 emails to people and just being like, this is who I am, this is what I can do, how can we serve? And that was the same year that I ended up meeting you later in that year. And the beginning 3 months of that journey were so stressful. Like they were so stressful because I was like, what if I have to move back to London? What am I gonna say to her parents? I mean, I just took their daughter away. Like,
just got married.
I've lived in New York City for 6 months and my life's falling apart. Like, you know, so much. And I've got all these views, but there's nothing happening. And we met.
But you also, I mean, at this time, you're also growing so much. How are you able to create and reach this impact with your videos as that's growing while you're under so much stress and uncertainty? And
I stopped a bit at that time. Like things slowed down hard. Like things slowed down.
I remember that.
I wasn't creating as much as I was because I don't enjoy creating from stress or pressure. And I don't think you can really create something from stress and pressure. So we really slowed down at that time. And when I was creating from a place of recognizing that I could share what I had learned and what I had grown in so far. So anything I was sharing was like, this is what I've learned so far. So that was the biggest pain that I've been through in the last 7 years, for sure. And all I can say is that I remember coming home to my wife knowing that this was gonna be the truth. And I came home and I said to her, I guarantee you, this is gonna be the best thing that ever happened to us.
What, the pain?
The pain. I said that to her the night I came home, and she gave out for that. I literally came home, I looked her in the eyes and go, this is the scenario. And I just want you to know that I guarantee to you, this is the best thing that's ever gonna happen to us. And I said to her, and this is a monk statement that we used to repeat, I said to her, I'm just not gonna judge the moment. Don't judge the moment, because what we do is we try to label moments as good or bad. And when you label a moment as bad, it now does not have the opportunity to become good. I'll give you an example. If I go, I don't like this book's bad, right? And I love this book. But if I say that, guess what? I will never pick it up and recognize the value that's inside of it because you've labeled it. And we label stuff like we label, oh, that restaurant's bad. But when you label a moment,
person's bad,
that person's bad. Now you can't learn from that person. Oh, a great one. That's a really good one. As soon as you start labeling people or anything as good or bad, you limit it. You stop it from being something else. And here's the truth. Every moment can evolve into being anything if you give it the opportunity to. But as soon as you say it's got no value anymore, you lose it. And so for me, I had to say to myself, don't judge the moment. And I'd keep repeating that to myself.
Don't judge where you're at.
Don't judge
what's happening.
Yeah, don't judge it as negative. Don't just start saying it's negative. Because guess what? We've all been in positions where a gift turned into a curse and a curse turned into a gift.
That's true.
Right? We've also
where our
been
dreams came true and it ended up not being what we wanted.
Exactly.
And it fell apart and it led us into our dreams.
Totally. Why is it that so many people that win the lottery go broke? Gifts can turn into curses too.
True.
But because we label them as the best moment in our life or the worst moment in our life. Whereas when you approach things to neutrality and just what you have on the table, you can be like, okay, what am I going to do next?
Before we continue this video, make sure to subscribe below and turn on the notification bell right now so you don't miss out on these great videos every single day. That's why the greatest quarterbacks are neutral energy. They'll get a little excited, they'll get a little fist pump in there every now and then, but they're not hyped every play and they're not negative every play. They have this calm, they see the field, you drop a pass and it's like a little bit, let's go. But it's very neutral. Even when you score a touchdown, unless it's maybe the Super Bowl or a big championship at the end of a game, in the middle of the game, you want to keep it pretty like even keel paced so you can prepare for the best or the worst.
That's great, yeah.
But if you're always up and down, it's like your energy levels will go up and down and you'll be exhausted.
Totally.
You need to have energy in life.
Totally.
And if everything is tied around a story of this is bad, this is wrong, I'm in a bad place, I'm messing up, I'm going broke, that energy is going to pull you away from service.
Exactly.
Or creation, or creativity of how do I get out of this place. So I think it's really powerful.
I love that. And I used to have a coach, and I think a lot of coaches use this, or at least he used to say to us, he would be like, if you lose, cry for a day. And if you celebrate, if you win, celebrate for a day.
Yeah, that's it.
And then move on the next day, get back to training. Don't let it run.
Don't live in the past.
Don't live in the past. And what we do is when we lose, we cry for a month. And when we win, we just move on.
Yeah.
Which means that our negative experiences hold us back and weigh us down more than our positive experiences. So we're actually allowing, because we don't immerse ourselves in winning and growth, we only submerge ourselves in negative experiences.
Yeah, we need to celebrate also. We try to celebrate. I've been, that's been part of my life as well, is like moving on too quick. And now we try to like, let's enjoy, let's go to lunch or dinner and really like appreciate this moment and celebrate this moment, and even have a dinner with some friends and family.
Totally.
Otherwise, what are we working so hard for?
100%. And we almost feel like we can't do that because that makes us complacent.
Right.
But that's my point.
It's never good enough.
Exactly. But if you win, celebrate for a day. If you lose, cry for a day, move on. Simple.
And you've learned so many lessons over your years. As a monk, you learned a ton of lessons, moving to, getting married, moving into a new country, building companies, launching products and books, and you've had ups and downs. What's been the biggest lesson in the last 12 months for you? Because you've created so much in the last 12 months. You've done so many things. What's been the biggest lesson for you in your life?
Oh, that's a big question. I think I'd have to say that and I was saying it to a friend on the phone this morning when I was on the way to you, and I was just sharing it with him because he was having a moment in recognizing this. There's a wonderful verse in the Manusmriti, which I talk about in Think Like a Monk. It's a monk book. And in the verse it says, when you protect your purpose protects you. Now, I want to unpack that. What I mean by that is your purpose is like a rare jewel and a rare gemstone. And imagine you were walking around with the most expensive diamond or jewel in the world. How would you protect it?
You want to just
wave
it out, yeah.
Yeah, you want to just wear it on your chest.
Like this.
Like a baby.
Holding it.
Yeah.
Putting a pillow around it, a blanket, protect it.
You'd protect it. And so your purpose is like that. And guess what? Wow. People are going to tell you every day that jewel is not worth anything. They're going to tell you that jewel is actually valueless. It doesn't have any impact on your life. They're going to try and take away that value. They're going to tell you that there's another jewel out there that you need to have more value. And what ends up happening is I love the word, look at the wording, protect your purpose. You have to protect it. So what happens is your success grows, you get more opportunities, more ideas, more things coming your way, temptations, but they can all take you away from your purpose. Distractions. And to me, I'm repeating this for myself because I'm like, I just want to stick to what I was born to do. And I'm so grateful that I get to do it. I'm so happy I get to do it. And I want to keep protecting it. I don't want to get lost in the waves. You don't want to just get chucked in the waves of the ocean and just get lost and just not know where you're going. So for me, when you protect your purpose protects you.
So that's been your biggest lesson?
That's my biggest lesson.
Why? Do you feel like your purpose has been maybe distracted in some ways?
I don't think it has. But I'm saying it so it doesn't. Like
You're reminding yourself.
Yeah, I'm reminding myself. Like I'm preaching to myself right now. It's
especially being in Hollywood and the temptation of all these opportunities out here.
Totally. And I think for me it's a bigger lesson also because it gives me more faith. So I always encourage, and this is actually this is why it's my biggest lesson. I encourage so many people that I coach, so many people that I mentor, obviously everyone in my community and audience and everything, to go and follow that, go and live that purpose. And I see time and time again that when I see people trying to live their purpose, they are protected, that things work. When you're playing in your dharma and your purpose, things work, things move, you feel momentum. They happen. And I'm not saying they happen without effort, but they happen, they move. Whereas when you're not, you just constantly feel like you're grinding up against, a war.
I know. Challenges.
Just constant.
So what is your purpose and when did you discover it?
Good question. What is my purpose is simple. It's always has been not since the beginning, because I discovered it afterwards. My purpose is making wisdom go viral. And I've stuck with that and I've kept it that way because to me, and there's more to it, making wisdom go viral through entertainment, I would say is my purpose, because I believe that is something that is uniquely my goal, impact, and service. Yeah. And the beautiful thing is I'm not limited to a platform. So that can be books, it can be podcasts, it can be TV shows, it can be movies. It's not limited. And this I learned by reading. I was reading after, and this was after my video started to get seen. This wasn't before I did it. It wasn't like I sat down and I wrote this fancy tagline. I was reading Salim Ismail's book called Exponential Organizations. And in this book, he talks about something called an MTP, a massive transformational purpose. And he says that every major person, organization in the world has an MTP. So an MTP has to be aspirational, it has to be massive, and it has to be service and purpose-based. So Google's is organizing the world's information. Notice it doesn't say we're an SEO company. Right. Notice it doesn't say we do Google ads. Right. They're organizing the world's information. That's how big they're dreaming. And when you're organizing the world's information, you can do driverless cars, you can do Google Glass, you can sell Google ads, whatever it is. And so TED's is ideas worth spreading. That's what they are. That's what they're about. So Jay Shetty is making wisdom go viral. That's what I'm dedicated to.
So when did you discover it? Because it wasn't when you were 10. It wasn't when you were 21 in college.
I'd say I was 30, probably 2-3 years ago. So I'm 32 now. So I'd say like 2-3 years ago is when I discovered it.
So 30 years old is when you discovered your purpose.
Correct.
So what was your purpose before that?
My purpose before that was finding my purpose. Like it's like that process of just like, my purpose before that was 14 years. So I've been online for 4 years. I've spent 10 years offline talking about the same stuff, sharing the same messages in talks, in universities, in small seminars, in coaching, in mentoring. Like I've been doing the same thing for 14 years. But I didn't realize it was my purpose until very recently. But I just did what I enjoyed and naturally try to get better at it.
So if we don't know what our purpose is and we're working towards finding our purpose, it's okay.
That's actually where you're going to spend most of your life.
Discovering what your purpose is.
Totally, and that's the best bit.
Because I think a lot of people are like, well, I don't know what my purpose is.
Totally, there's so much pressure.
How do I find it?
The pressure of finding your purpose will stop you from finding your purpose. Literally, the pressure is so heavy. And that's why it's not about finding that. It's just starting with the basics. What am I good at? And I talk about it, and I break down Dharma in here, and I talk about what are your passion, what is your expertise, what is your compassion, because that's really important. What is your compassion for the world? Like, what problem do you want to solve? People will say, there's so many things I could do, there's so many things. I'm like, my question is not what causes you the greatest joy. Sometimes my question is, what causes you the greatest pain?
Make that your purpose.
Make that your purpose. If you don't know what your joy is, you definitely know what your pain is.
What do you not like in the world?
What do you not like? And so for me,
go serve that thing.
100%. So for me, the greatest pain I see in the world is people not reaching their potential. That causes me more pain, because I believe that there is someone out there who is stacking shelves who has the cure to cancer. There is someone out there
who's a talented singer.
There is someone out there who's not living to their potential, and I think we're better people, we're better partners, and we're better parents when we live to our potential. So that's what I'm trying to solve. And I'm not saying that's the biggest thing, I'm just saying it's my thing.
Whenever I work with people, I'm always telling them, to find your purpose, focus on what you're most passionate about or what you have the most pain around.
There you go.
It's the same thing. It's like, do the thing you love the most and keep doing it until you either discover that's it or maybe I don't love that anymore. Like I played so many sports growing up. I used to love baseball. I used to love soccer. And then I got bored with it. I got burnt out by it. It wasn't a love of mine anymore. It wasn't a passion. And then I switched to football. And it was like, oh, this is a passion. And I'm actually more gifted physically for this sport than I would be for soccer. I was too big for soccer. I couldn't run 7 miles a day right now on the field. But I think you need to try lots of things, and you might think it's a passion, but you might get burnt out and discover, I don't love it anymore. What else is there? And keep trying new things. Like you said, 8 new things a month.
Yeah.
till you discover.
Till you discover
And it
it.
might take you 30, 40, 50, right?
It doesn't, and that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the fun is in the growth and the journey and
Yeah.
like, for me, the last 10 years before this happened and my life changed, it was like, those were fun. I was happy.
Right.
I wasn't unhappy because of that, because I didn't
You
have.
didn't know the exact purpose of your life.
Yeah, exactly. And now I'm very clear on it. And I'm happy for it to evolve too. Like, I don't think it has to stay the same. I may sit with you in 2 years' time and tell you something completely different.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. But I can only work with what I have now. And I think we start trying to postpone our purpose or find a date by which you have to. You put a deadline on your purpose? Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I'd say one of the first questions that always comes to my mind is how can I be of service today? How can I be and this is extended from that first question, how can I be an instrument of love, compassion, and kindness? And that's what I count as service in my own definition. And so what I would say to anyone listening is define the words yourself. Because what service means to me may be different to you.
Right.
And so it's important. But for me, it's like, how can I be of service today? And the reason why I love that is, we've talked about this before, when you're wired for service, you're set up, right? We talked about in the last podcast, like service sets you up to feel satisfaction, to build bonds and create connections, and does so much. So being of service is one of the first questions I would ask. The second question I would ask myself is, what do I love about myself? Right? What do I actually love about myself?
That is probably the most powerful question anyone could ask, because most people never learn to love themselves.
Totally.
And we always find the things that we don't love about ourselves, and we fixate on those things. And that's one of the repeating thoughts in our head that keeps us playing small every day.
All the time. All the time. And we talk a lot about today self-love and self-care. But I think, a lot of that starts with self-awareness, which we know about, self-knowledge. But self-knowledge creates self-trust. And a lot of it's like learning to trust ourselves. And it's like, if I don't know what I love about myself, how am I ever going to trust myself? How am I going to trust that I have my best interest at heart?
Yeah.
And so asking yourself, what do you love? And then the third and final question I think I would ask myself is who do I want to be? Right? Who is the person that I need to be that I can love, that I want to love, that I want to give more love to? Like, what parts of growth are there still available? And there's one thing I want to add, which isn't a question, but it has been a really reaffirming or deepening affirmation for me that I keep reminding myself, and I think it's helped a lot of people that I've shared it with, is literally some days I'll just put my hand on my heart and I'll just repeat to myself, I'm exactly where I need to be. And
So true.
it's just such a great reminder. Like, if you literally put your hand on your heart and you just go, I am exactly where I need to be, you stop getting lost in the future, you stop worrying about the past, and you realize that everything you need to learn, everything you read right now to make a change, it's all right now, it's all right here. And so that's one of my favorite things to repeat. It's not a question, but
It's more of a mantra saying,
correct, yeah.
because I find it so hard for people today who compare themselves to everyone online
Yeah.
about not being where they want to be, or not having the career or the relationship or the body or whatever, the following or the attention. A lot of people compare themselves to other people in their space,
Yeah.
friends, family, and then don't feel enough. And so when we say to ourselves, I'm exactly where I need to be, does that help us eliminate the feeling of not being enough?
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on, because we're always feeling like we either feel like we're ahead, we feel like, oh, I'm doing better than everyone, I'm kind of like winning the game, or more often we feel behind, where we feel like, oh, they just got promoted, oh, they just, they got proposed to, whatever it is. Like, we always feeling
They had
ahead.
their first child or
They
whatever.
had their first child, they bought their first house, whatever it is, and we're always feeling ahead or behind. And so when you say to yourself, I'm exactly where I need to be, you realize you're not ahead or behind. And the problem is, if you always think you're ahead or behind, then you're always comparing yourself to others. Whereas if you're where you need to be, you now just need to get to the next place of where you want to be.
Yeah.
And also, you only get ahead of yourself by first being present with yourself.
And I think it's really hard to say that when you're in a challenging place in your life. I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm broke. My dog died. My girlfriend broke up with me. Like, it's hard to accept that.
Yeah.
And I've been there. I know you've been there. It's really challenging to say, my life is perfect right now, when you don't feel that way.
Yeah.
But I think when you can learn to accept timing of life and know that, a mentor of mine early on, when I was broke and I was an intern working for free for 6 months for someone. I was living on my sister's couch. I remember saying I would do walks with him every day. And I was like, man, I could really use some money, like in my life. I'm just sick of being broke. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, money comes to you when you're ready for it. And I was like, I feel pretty ready right now. Like, I feel like I could have some money.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready for it. Mentally, emotionally, my life wasn't set up. I didn't have systems set up in place to really receive the money and be able to do good with it and be able to use it for good in my life and put it to good use. And later, when I started to make money, I realized like, oh, I probably would have blown that money. I would have spent it poorly. I would have made the wrong investments, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
It's hard to hear when things aren't going well, but I think trusting the timing of your life. Like if you would have built your empire 7 years ago, you probably wouldn't have been ready for, maybe you would have been, but you wouldn't have been ready, or social media wasn't the right timing for your message to be out there. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that if I wouldn't have gone to monk school, then I think you can become successful but still feel extremely dissatisfied or misuse the success.
Yes.
And I don't think that that can be blamed on anyone because no one's ever been taught how to deal with failure or success. There's no class on here's how you deal with failure or here's how you deal with success. But the funny thing is those are the two most extreme things that we all experience.
And the things we're most afraid of are failure and success.
And success.
Before we continue this video, make sure to subscribe below and turn on the notification bell right now so you don't miss out on these great videos every single day. So how do we deal with failure? If you could give a mini masterclass right now, what would you suggest to people who are afraid to fail, how to deal with it?
Yeah. I think one of my first things in failure is don't take it more personally than it actually is. And I'll give an example of that. When I was applying to 40 companies that all rejected me before an interview, all I was getting was an automated response saying your application will not go any further. I can't take that personally because they didn't meet me in person. They didn't have a interaction with me. They just saw my name. They saw I'd been a monk for 3 years. That resume is useless. I mean, what's your transferable skills? Like sitting in silence and stillness. Surprise, surprise, no one wants to hire a monk. And so they rejected you, but that's not personal because they didn't meet me in person.
But what if they had meeting you in person?
Right, so that's the first step. The first step is don't take all failure. I'll give an example. Me and you, we reach out to countless guests to be on our podcast.
Who say no all the time.
Who say no all the time. But if I don't hear a no from the guest directly, that's not a no. Like someone's team can say no, someone's assistant can say no, someone's PR team can say no, but until they say no personally, it's not a no.
Okay, but when they do say no,
then that's a no. Yeah, so then let's move to that.
So how do you deal with that type of failure?
Yes, so if I deal with a failure where someone meets me in person and gets to know me.
No, Jay, you're horrible, you suck, like I don't want to deal with a monk ever in my life.
Yeah.
I would never go on your show, I'm never listening to you. Never.
Yeah.
Then how do you deal with that type of
So
failure?
I've heard you say this, I've said it a couple of times and I'm sure it's been repeated a bunch of times around how I genuinely believe failure has feedback.
It's feedback.
And so for me, it's like failure has the ability to actually tell you what you need to improve. Now, not to improve to get their attention, improving to get the actions that you want to take.
Yeah, the results you want.
The results you want. And don't make that result about the person who said no. Don't use failure as a way to prove someone else wrong.
Because what happens when we prove others wrong?
When you prove others wrong, you end up trying to get validation and approval for them. And now if they're not impressed when you're right, you lose again. So you end up losing twice.
And you spend all this time and energy, years maybe, to prove someone wrong. I've been there many times. And then you're like, I felt good for a moment. And then I feel empty again.
Totally. And so that's the thing about failure in the second half is you have to see failure as an improvement. If I'm completely honest, everyone who rejected me in my life up until now has made me more hungry, taught me so much more about myself, and made me up my game.
Yeah.
And I think if failure doesn't make you up your game, it's the same as losing in a sport. Right? When you fail and you've lost games and you've won games, you know, on the big stages.
You didn't have the skills, you didn't have the teamwork, you guys weren't hungry enough,
you
whatever
weren't communicating
it is.
enough.
There's something you were missing.
Yeah.
So you go review the game film, you check the stats, you see what could I have done better, and you try to improve that for the next game.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can do that in life, but we're so afraid to like go on the next game of life. Like I got rejected once and it hurts so bad.
Yeah.
how do people learn to overcome that pain of rejection?
Yeah.
To keep going.
Yeah.
You know, in sports, luckily there's a season, which is like you might have 30 basketball games. After you lose the first 2, you don't say, I'm just going to give up the rest of the season.
Yeah.
You keep playing.
Yes.
But in life, a lot of people stop playing.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. I think that's great mental training too. I think sports is great mental training because you have to show up to the next game even if you lost and you don't feel bad.
Exactly.
That you don't feel good, sorry. And one of the things, before I dive into that question, one of the things that you reminded me of was the Last Dance documentary. So there's that season that Michael Jordan, everyone is in agreement that he is one of the best players to be playing. And they keep losing.
And they didn't make the finals.
Right? They didn't make the finals. They lost. And then they realized they need to get the team. And they need to find, I think they bring in Dennis Rodman. And then they start bringing in all these other players that strengthen. Whereas if they would have just said, we got the best player in the world, we just keep doing this, I'm not sure they would have got there, right? But the coach, Phil Jackson, and the team, they had to adapt. And so you're saying, why do we feel that pain in rejection and how do we deal with that? I think we feel that pain because we look at a failure, right? We look at it as a complete definition of us, right? We're looking at it as there's that famous statement of like, failure is an event, not a person.
Right.
And I don't know who said it, but it's one of those statements that really clicks. Like failure is an event, not a person. Whereas we start thinking we are the failure. Like we say, I am a failure. Exactly, right? Like those are the words. I am a failure. I got rejected. And it's like, no, your application got rejected.
Yeah, your efforts.
Your effort, your specific effort at this moment in time got rejected. Your specific exam at this point got failed. You are not a failure. And so you have to disconnect and distance yourself from the event.
You know what's interesting is like no one who was successful at everything they did ever told a good story. Like the greatest stories are the ones who overcame failure and adversity. It's not the ones who are like, everything was easy for me. Everyone loved me. Everyone accepted my actions. I didn't have to work hard. And it just came to me effortlessly. Like people don't care about that.
No.
That's not a good story. That's not an inspirational human being.
Yeah.
It's the human that had to deal with adversity that we really admire and we look up to.
Yeah.
Even if they had some low moments, it's a much better story of hearing about someone's failure than hearing how they succeeded.
Totally. And that's a beautiful lesson that one of the biggest mistakes we make is we don't study the stories of the greats. So how many people's lives have you studied from start to finish?
Yeah.
If you've studied someone's life from start to finish, I genuinely believe this is like the core skill that's needed. I would say that the people I admire, I have studied their lives from start to finish. I know why they made bad decisions, what they consider to be good decisions. Like there's autobiographies and biographies out there. There's podcasts like ours where people can come and listen to people's stories. If you've not studied someone's story, then you can't follow that path because every time you hit a rejection, so every time I get rejected, I think of Steve Jobs getting kicked out of his own company.
Crazy, isn't it?
Every time I fail, I think about Michael Jordan losing a game. Every time I get tired of training, I think about Cristiano Ronaldo putting in that extra rep. Those are the visual cues that we need, but you only get those visual cues if you've done the research and the study. And then you go, if Steve Jobs was kicked out of his own company, but then still had the audacity at one point to go and build Pixar, then I think I'm all right if I just didn't get this job.
Yeah, and and Apple wouldn't be where it is today without him getting kicked out, learning the lessons, having humility, like gaining some compassion, all the things that people said he didn't have fully at that time. He learned by having to be kicked out, start something else, bring a new perspective.
Yeah.
What did you call it? The association?
Yeah, associating, yeah.
Like he was able to then go somewhere else and spot different trends, and then he came back to Apple and built it to where it is today, or helped build it to where it is today. And Apple wouldn't be where it is today without him being a rejection.
Which is crazy to just think of that. Yeah, exactly.
So if he would have kept saying, I'm going to keep doing it my way, and this is the way it is, it probably would have had some challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the more you study the lives of inspirational people, and that's what I'd say is everyone should pick their top 3 inspirational people and go and study their lives.
The full life. Yeah.
Their full life.
Yeah.
And read the biography, the autobiography, listen to every podcast. I mean, like seriously get immersed in that person or the journey in the industry you're trying to make it in. And when you do that, you'll realize that your journey actually doesn't look that different from theirs.
Yeah.
It actually probably looks similar.
So how do we go inside our minds and say, okay, I'm getting rejected over and over again. I'm trying really hard. It's not working. How do we still deal with that emotional pain? Is it just the self-awareness that every great person had to go through this and this is just a timing thing? Like, how do we eventually just ease that? Or should we not try to ease that pain?
I don't think it's about easing it. I think it's about engaging it. You know, and I believe that the engaging does the easing, in my opinion, at least. So what I mean by that is, behind that pain is a understanding that I don't have this skill.
Yes.
Or is an understanding of I didn't try hard enough. Or is an understanding of, oh, maybe there's just another option. Because guess what? Sometimes you may have done the best pitch in the world and you just had an executive that didn't like your vibe.
Keep going.
And
keep asking different people.
Keep going. Like you know, you've just got to realize that you have to engage that pain in discovery, and that eases it, because when you discover, like, for example, let's take my podcast. My podcast producer, the team that was meant to produce my podcast, pulled out 2 weeks before we launched my podcast. And I thought I had this big deal lined up. I was really excited. I'd never launched a podcast before. And I thought, oh yeah, this can be amazing. And I was in India meditating for my annual trip that I take. I come back and the first news I remember receiving is, by the way, this isn't happening anymore. And I'd set that I was going to launch my podcast on Valentine's Day 2019. And I had my episodes recorded with my wife, and I'd already gone out and made the content. So just to tee up how bad that 2 week notice was, I'd already gone to Monaco, interviewed Novak. I'd already interviewed Lily, I'd interviewed Russell Brand in London, I'd interviewed my wife, and obviously those people are all close friends and people I know, so they were very happy to be on the podcast even when it was new. So I'd already done all that effort, I'd already created all the content myself. All this podcast company was going to do was put it out there and help me market it a bit, and then they pull out 2 weeks before it comes out. And I'm going to myself, wow, okay, like I can either sit here and be really sad, or I can scrap together and figure it out. And so the only thing I realized was it actually turned out perfectly, because now I own my podcast fully. And I'm completely aware of every part of the journey, and it gave me more confidence in myself that I could scrap together when I had to.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it is, that we lack confidence. We're waiting for someone else to tell us how we should feel about ourselves.
And I think if we go back to those 3 questions you said, like when you're feeling a failure over and over and over again, or you feel a sense of I'm not enough or whatever it may be, go back to asking those 3 questions to yourself. How can I be of service today or serve today? What can I love about myself? So even when everyone's saying no, what is there to love about me?
Correct.
To remind yourself and not be validated by other people's opinions.
Yeah.
And who do I want to be
Yeah.
that I can love?
Yes, exactly.
Like,
who do I need to become?
Who do I need to become that I can love? And just keep focusing on the process, because the process is the prize.
Yes.
And focus on that journey.
The stuff is really fleeting and temporary. I bought an island lately, you know that, right? Like when I bought this island, it didn't they didn't make me more confident. It just was something that I've always wanted to be able to do. But it's not stuff. What needs to happen for me is that I'm most confident when I'm living in my intention, which is to serve.